Hey guys, and welcome back to Fireside Farms. My name is Megan and I have a 1.5 acre homestead in southwest New Mexico. I live in the arid desert, in the Chihuahuan Desert specifically. Today is May 10th, 2022, and I'm going to give just a quick little garden tour. That is the sole focus of today's video. I'll show you around what I have planted out. There's still some left to be planted out. But then I'm going to transplant out all of my amaranth and quinoa that I up-potted with you guys 2 weeks ago, I think. So that's what we're gonna do today. Welcome. So I live in zone 8A, but I try not to focus on that in my videos because beyond influencing the perennials that I plant in my front yard garden, it doesn't really have much bearing on how I plant here. It is the beginning of May, but for several weeks it has already been above 90 degrees in my garden. So for my current growing conditions, I live in a very dry desert environment and I live in a wind tunnel. I'm sure the wind is already bad on here. The best I can do is wait until the evening or the very, very early mornings to record because it's basically at minimum strongly breezy all day. So on top of being very, very dry, it's also very, very windy, which just increases the evapotranspiration of the plants, just leading to more and more dryness constantly. So mostly my major concerns in my garden due to where I live are retaining moisture and protecting from the sun. So stepping back right here, I'm looking west. It's about 6:30 in the afternoon, but we have this shade structure. It's 25 by 35. It's actually 40 by 25, but the actual shade cloth is only 35 by 25. And that helps tremendously with the plants. We have incredible UV rays here, along with just the general heat. But right here at the east end of this garden plot, I have 2 tomato beds, one here and one here. They're doing pretty well. They had a little bit of transplant shock, and for a while they weren't covered. So when I first transplanted these tomatoes out, they were not under the shade cloth. Chase and I had tried to put up our own shade cloth poles, and the type of sand that we have here and the wind, it wasn't good enough, honestly, and we had to pay someone to come in with a welder and metal poles and erect this metal shade cloth structure that we have now. But before that was done, I had already transplanted out all of the tomatoes, so they did take a bit of a beating because it did get up to 90 degrees in mid-April. So it was very, very hot, and they were very young on top of the wind and everything else. So they're getting a bit of a slower start, but they are doing good now. So these Amish pastes right here are looking still wilty, like I had complained about when I first started them. This is my first year growing them, and fairly certain they just naturally grow that way. So I'm not too concerned about it anymore. The rest are normal looking comparatively to the tomatoes I've grown before. Now I don't have the actual names of every variety in here. I got all of the labels blown out of my seedling trays. So I'll just have to let you guys know which tomatoes are which as they begin to ripen, because that's the only way I'm going to know which tomatoes are which. So right to the west of the tomato bed we have just random flowers. Here we have a dill that's already going to seed. That's calendula, and yarrow and chamomile. So there are only 2 real pests that I struggle with at the very beginning of the season, and those are leaf miners and cabbage moths or cabbage butterflies. Either way, they lay their eggs, their larvae, on these plants, and the leaf miners love, love, love my pepper plants, and they just decimate the pepper leaves. And the cabbage butterflies lay their larvae on all of my kale that I plant in spring. All the kale that I plant in spring, and they just put holes in them. And I do use neem oil. Most oftentimes that's not enough. The best thing I do just to combat the pests without having to make my own life miserable is just to wait to transplant all of these plants outside until they have large and many leaves, so that they can withstand the pest pressure. If they get half eaten, they'll still survive. So still in the same bed, I have the eucalyptus. These are so beautiful. These are Coreopsis, and this is my first time growing them, and I just think they are darling. Look at them. And they smell so good. And of course, the beautiful cosmos, which are lighting up my garden over there as well. And these are amaranths. Not the typical amaranth you harvest for seed, but just so that you can harvest the leaves. Basically as a warm season lettuce green, or a green to eat. Obviously they're not green, they're red. But nonetheless. This is my pepper bed, which does not look amazing. As I just said, right now they were eaten up by leaf miners. Let me see if I can just find you some damage. Oh, right here, perfect. Let's focus. You guys can see that. This is where leaf miners... So there isn't just one species of bug that is the leaf miner. It's actually, I believe, 3 or more different species of bugs, but essentially the fly or moth lays their eggs on the plant, and then the larva becomes the leaf miner in question, burrowing in its way through the leaf and eating it as sustenance until it emerges from the leaf, and then the life cycle continues. So this damage here, it will not kill this pepper plant, but enough of the leaves being damaged to cause them to all die obviously will kill it. So there aren't a whole lot of remedies for leaf miners, and I'm not going to get into them today, but they're doing okay. My peppers are all right. I've sprayed some neem oil. The first attack has stopped, so I think they'll make it. Here I had planted some of the Blauhild bean seeds that I seed saved from last season. Obviously I only have 2 here. They did not do very well. I don't have anything but Bermuda grass coming up on either side of these, so that's unfortunate, but it's an opportunity for me to plant something else, and I always love planting more seeds. So mostly in this bed I'm just going to do squash. I have some failed ground cherries. I don't quite know what happened to these guys. So only the top of this guy got burned, it looks like, honestly. Get this to focus. So I'm wondering if it was the sun, because it does get pretty harsh afternoon light. But this is my first time growing them, so I don't know if they just really like humid environments or what. We'll see if they survive and I get anything. But I have not planted this bed out. I have a couple squash growing, but most of them didn't make it from seed. I usually have that problem, so I'm going to transplant a lot in here. This is my onion and garlic bed. I have harvested onion and garlic from it already. I have not grown onions from seed before, and I think I did plant them a little late for my area. Some of the tops are falling over already without the onions actually drying out and yellowing at the top. So I have to do more research. I know there is some premature falling over of the stems that I may have to be concerned about. I didn't plant a whole lot this year. I think there's maybe like 10 viable onions in here. They're only on this side. These are all my garlics. So I'm not too concerned about it, but it is something to know because I do plan on growing many more this fall. Hopefully enough to last for a whole year. Right here I've transplanted some corn, which is doing okay. They survived the transplant. They had a little bit of shock at first. It is super hot right here. There's a lot of radiant heat off of this sand. And just my general area has a lot of heat. But they're doing good. Right here is some quinoa. Just 2 little stalks, just little tester stalks. They don't love the full sun, especially my full sun. So they aren't thriving, but they are surviving. Right here I have 7 rows of potatoes. So in these first 4 rows, I have red Norland potatoes from Haas Tools, and these are doing awesome. They were actually planted in the beginning of March, and I thought they weren't going to do very well because I still had a couple freezes into March, but they're thriving better than these Yukon Golds that I picked up from Tractor Supply. But look at these flowers. And since this is my first year growing potatoes, I'm not quite sure if the quality has something to do with it. I'm sure it does, but like I said, the Yukon Golds were just something I picked up in the checkout line of Tractor Supply. And these Viking potatoes were ones I picked up from a reputed certified seed company. So we'll see how they produce when I finally dig them up. Over here against my perimeter fence, I have cowpeas, which are doing good for being in full sun. Under here I have a little squash plant. I don't remember what type of squash, but I just threw him in here because I had nothing to do with him. For the most part, guys, that is the vegetable garden, minus the amaranth and quinoa I'm going to plant right now. Oh, I forgot one thing. In this little bed at the end of the walkway, I have more calendula, spearmint, black-eyed Susan vine, which is not loving the heat, and a zinnia, and some thyme. So this bed's kind of a smorgasbord of things. I had the thyme plant, a marigold, the black-eyed Susan vine, and the spearmint in here at first, and the thyme did not survive the heat, neither did the marigold. So I've replanted it with various flowers and herbs. Essentially, I want to populate this bed with mint because it'll be contained. I might have to find a new place for it if it's too hot. So thanks for joining me on this quick little garden tour. As the garden becomes more prolific, starts flowering more, and actually setting fruits, then we can go through a full garden tour and I can show you all of the varieties that I have once I actually know what they are. But for now, let's get this amaranth and quinoa in the ground. So yeah, I'm actually gonna make this 2 separate videos. I'm starting the work with the soil for the amaranth and the quinoa, and it's just gonna take way too long. I'm losing sunlight, and I actually have a lot that I want to explain while I'm planting these. So tune in for that video. That'll be next. But thank you for joining me for this quick garden tour.